the economic resilience of the nation's capital.
Thank you. Very good. I now recognize Chairman Middleton for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Garcia, Congresswoman Norton, members of the committee. I'm Chairman of the Council of the District of Columbia. Our form of government is nearly identical to yours. The Council's relationship to the mayor is the same as yours to the President. I'm pleased to testify and to finally present our views on matters that are clearly of concern to the committee. We are a beautiful city. Our public parks are well maintained. Our roads are in good condition. We have a world-class public transit system. Our public education system is a leader in the country in terms of choice and a leader among large city systems in terms of growth and academic achievement. Political rhetoric notwithstanding, criminal activity has been on the decline, with violent crime dipping to a 30-year low last year and even lower this year. The percentage of our citizens with health insurance is one of the highest in the country. Public lands, public transit, public education, public safety, public health, core functions of government, and we are doing well. And we are well managed. We adopt a balanced budget on time every year. We spend within our budget every year. We've had clean audits every year. We continue to maintain strong cash reserves. All of our pension programs are fully funded. And we continue to maintain AAA and AA plus financial ratings despite Wall Street's expressed concern over the negative economic impact of federal actions. Despite these pluses, we are a city under siege. It is frustrating to watch this committee debate and vote on 14 bills regarding the district without a single public hearing, with no input from district officials or the public, without regard for community impact, nor a shred of analysis including legal sufficiency or fiscal impact. Bills like H.R. 5183, the District of Columbia Home Rule Improvement Act, make the district less efficient, less competitive, and less responsive to the needs of a highly complex, unique local government that serves local, county, and state functions. The SOAR Improvements Act would actually hurt 50,000 school kids in the district by defunding the DC public school system by approximately $17.5 million. It also would void a long-standing compromise agreed to by Congress with district officials. H.R. 5140, the Juvenile Sentencing Reform Act, is actually criminogenic. Data suggests that juveniles tried as adults are not scared straight, but rather are more likely to reoffend sooner and more often than those treated in the juvenile system. Moreover, you criticize the council for being soft on crime, but the current age thresholds this bill repudiates were enacted by Congress. Over the last several years, the council has taken steps to strengthen our criminal laws, and I will note that we have been able to pass these bills while Congress has not. For instance, we have strengthened the probability of pretrial detention. Even before we did that, the rearrest rate for individuals released pretrial was among the lowest in the country. We have strengthened, by clarifying and imposing new penalties, the criminal laws including shoplifting, carjacking, strangulation, and felony endangerment with a firearm. We have reinstated police resource officers in our schools, and we have taken a number of steps to support our police, including approving just yesterday a 13% pay raise for police officers and approving hiring incentives to increase the ranks of our police force. And we're about to adopt a deferred retirement option program to make service more attractive and to incentivize officers to stay longer. Instead of blaming the council, there are tangible actions we need from you because our public safety system is part federal. For instance, the greatest deterrents to crime are arrest and prosecute, but the U.S. Attorney prosecutes our criminals. And the best way to reduce recidivism is prison programming, but the U.S. Bureau of Prisons is responsible for this. And to further reduce rearrests for ex-offenders and pretrial suspects, we need two federal agencies, CSOSA and Pretrial Services, better resourced. If Congress really wants to further reduce crime in the District of Columbia, here's what you can do. Fill USAO vacancies. double the funding we already provide for MPD hiring bonuses, adequately fund CSOSA and the Pretrial Services Agency, fully reimburse MPD for protecting the federal presence. The underfunding by Congress over the last 4 fiscal years totals $83 million. Submit and confirm our judicial nominees. Our courts have a 20% vacancy rate in judges, backlogging the criminal docket. Amend the Federal Privacy Act so that more data can be shared between federal and local law enforcement agencies. Allow our local attorney general to prosecute all misdemeanors because the United States attorney usually does not. And help us pay for a new jail, which houses federal prisoners, just as Congress helped pay for a new forensic lab 15 years ago. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I appreciate the committee's attention, and I also want to welcome Congressman Garcia as the new ranking member.
Thank you. Now recognize General Schwab for his opening statement.
Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Garcia, Congresswoman Norton, members of the committee, I'm Brian Schwab, DC Attorney General, and I'm pleased to testify about the work my office is doing to advance the district's interests and to make Washington, D.C. safer and more affordable for everyone. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian. My wife and I raised our 3 daughters here. I love this city. Just like your home districts, D.C. is made up of vibrant neighborhoods, hardworking, talented people who are the backbone of our culture and our economy. We are small business owners, veterans, teachers, nurses, and police officers, committed civil servants. We are Americans who deserve the same freedom to govern ourselves as your constituents enjoy. But unlike your constituents who benefit from having you here to advance their interests, the more than 700,000 residents who call D.C. home have no vote in Congress. We do, however, have elected local leaders, including an elected Attorney General. As Attorney General, I am committed to ensuring Washingtonians have a first-rate public law office, enforcing their laws, protecting their taxpayer dollars, and advancing the public interest. My office handles thousands of matters across an array of issues, from enforcing child support orders and protecting domestic violence victims to holding companies accountable for fueling the opioid crisis. We protect seniors and consumers from scams. We go after slumlords. We defend district agencies, including our police department, securing and saving hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Nothing is more important to the work we do than making the district safer for everyone who lives here, works here, and visits here. As you've heard, DC's criminal justice system is unique, and its structure is often a source of confusion. Unlike anywhere else in the country, the responsibility for prosecuting local crime in the district is divided between the federal government, the United States Attorney's Office, which handles all adult felonies and most adult misdemeanors, and my office, which prosecutes juvenile delinquency cases and certain adult misdemeanors. Because the vast majority of crime in the District of Columbia is committed by adults, not juveniles, it is the U.S. Attorney's Office that handles the vast majority of prosecution. Despite our limited jurisdiction, we take our responsibility over juvenile prosecution seriously. Our attorneys aggressively prosecute violent juvenile offenses whenever there is sufficient evidence to meet the burden of proof. Kids must face consequences, swift and certain consequences when they break the law. And our prosecutors work every day to hold them accountable and ensure victims receive justice. Last year, we prosecuted 84% of all violent juvenile cases, including over 90% of homicides and attempted homicides, 87% of carjackings, and 86% of gun cases. Crime rates last year reached 30-year lows and have continued to decline this year. But there is more work to be done. We must continue to pursue a comprehensive public safety strategy. Effective policing and prosecution are critical, so too are preventive efforts designed to stop crime before it happens. Keeping people safe is not a choice between law enforcement or prevention. We must do both. As the nation's capital, public safety in the district has always required a strong working partnership with federal law enforcement, regardless of who is in the White House. We have worked and will continue to work closely with our federal law enforcement partners every day. But declarations of emergency and unilateral federal actions taken without coordination or advance warning do not promote long-term public safety. Sending masked agents in unmarked cars to pick people off the streets, flooding our neighborhoods with National Guardsmen who are untrained in local policing, attempting a federal takeover of our police force. None of these are durable, long-lasting solutions for driving crime down. In fact, they threaten to destroy critical trust between local communities and the police, trust which is essential to effective, efficient policing and prosecution. There are constructive ways the federal government can work with us to continue driving crime down. For example, Congress can help combat the flood of illegal guns pouring into our city. 95% of illegal guns that end up on our streets come from outside the district. We also need help filling longstanding judicial vacancies, confirming our highly qualified nominees. The vacancy crisis has led to severe case backlogs, with felony cases being scheduled into 2027, resulting in delayed justice for crime victims and the community. Finally, Congress could help by investing desperately needed services in facilities like a psychiatric residential treatment facility for youth with serious mental and behavioral health issues that often contribute to crime. All of us, DC's elected officials, members of Congress, we have a shared goal of continuing to make durable improvements to public safety in the District of Columbia. I and my office are ready to have serious discussions on how best to do that with anybody who is willing in good faith and in a spirit of partnership to have them with us. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, General. Now I'll recognize Mr. Jackson for his opening statement.
All right, thank you, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Garcia, Congresswoman Norton, and the committee for having me. I'm Greg Jackson, a D.C. resident, a survivor of gun violence, and the former Deputy Director for the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. This was an office that coordinated federal resources, implemented life-saving policies, and coordinated with local leaders to achieve a 13.2% reduction in violent crime and a 31% reduction in homicides nationwide in just 2 years. I spent the last decade of my life working to address this crisis, from consoling a mother who lost her 10-year-old who was buying ice cream in D.C. to walking the hallways in Parkland with families that have lost their loved ones to school shootings. And we've seen firsthand how this is destroying too many families in our country. This is now the leading cause of death for youth in America, the leading cause of death for pregnant women in America, and now the leading cause of newly disabled Americans. With 1 in 5 Americans being impacted by this violence, this is also personal for me. I'm a survivor of gun violence. I was shot, the bullet hit 2 arteries. I've also lost my teenage mentee, DeMarcos, from a shooting. And I've also sat with families throughout this district. Despite this crisis we face, the last few years have shown us that we do have solutions that work. In the previous 2 years, D.C. and cities across the country have seen historic reductions in gun violence without the deployment of masked agents or the military. We did this by investing in prevention and intervention efforts to communities at risk, and strategically investing in law enforcement to keep illegal guns off of our streets and to close homicides. Recently, even the current FBI director, Kash Patel, celebrated historic levels or historic reductions in violent crime. But we know that's not the product of a few months of troops or FBI actions. They are the result of billions in prevention resources, law enforcement, and community leaders risking their lives every day, as well as the transformative policies implemented over the last few years. Without masked agents and troop deployments, we've seen homicides drop 54% in Baltimore, 20% in Atlanta, 41% in Phoenix, 27% in Los Angeles, and as shared by district leadership, violent crime in D.C. is down by 53%. We got here in major part because Republicans and Democrats came together to enact a bipartisan law that provided historic resources for violence prevention, law enforcement strategies, as well as enhanced our background check system for those under 21, preventing domestic abusers from accessing guns, making the largest investment in youth mental health in history, as well as community violence intervention, and making gun trafficking a federal crime, prosecuting those who are flooding guns into our communities. These strategies, in partnership with local leaders, reduced homicides again by 31% and mass shootings by 20% in our country. As our communities have been fighting our way out of this crisis, we find ourselves at a dangerous crossroad. Instead of adding more federal resources to solutions that work, the Trump administration has dismantled and defunded bipartisan strategies passed into law to reduce violence. They shut down the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. They defunded law enforcement, including the ATF. They cut over $1 billion in mental health resources for our schools, terminated $812 million in funding for community violence intervention programs, defunded gun violence research, shut down the CDC Firearm Injury Center, dismantled important regulations like the zero tolerance policy for gun dealers, and now plans to further defund critical resources to address the root causes of violence like housing, employment, and health care. And here in DC, the administration and Congress's actions have been extremely harmful, withholding over $1 billion of DC local tax dollars, undermining our leadership, and flooding our neighborhoods with military to instill fear in everyday Americans. Look, I live in Ward 8, a community that the White House has called a slum. But for us, this is a neighborhood where we walk our dogs, we listen to jazz on Sundays, we grill out during the summers, and most importantly, like any neighborhood, we support each other. But since this DC Trump takeover, we hear sirens nightly. We've seen buildings raided daily, like the building of young Mackay, who's sitting behind me. We've seen elderly harassed on their porch, and now even traffic jams from the flood of police and military on our streets. This deployment of federal troops that's essentially making us feel hostage in our own homes is not the federal support we need. And most importantly, it's costly, costing our country an estimated $200 million for one city alone. To be tough on crime, we need a different approach. We need a federal law enforcement that focuses on keeping guns out of our communities in the first place. We need to be tough on crime by fully funding the ATF to catch gun traffickers, to shut down rogue gun dealers, to disrupt dangerous black markets of firearms. To be tough on crime, we need to protect and fund the bipartisan Safer Communities Act that was passed and is working. To be tough on crime, we must hold the billionaires accountable that have put weapons from the battlefield into our backyards. And to be tough on crime, we must fund resources for communities that are most at risk to prevent violence before it happens. We have real solutions to save lives from gun violence and reduce violent crime, and now is the time to protect that progress and continue to build on that momentum. Thank you. And Chairman, if you will, I do want to request, we had a really terrible tragedy last night where 5 officers were shot and 3 were lost, and I would kindly like to request we honor them with a moment of silence, if you will.
Absolutely. Join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your statement, Mr. Jackson. That concludes our opening statements. We're now going to proceed with questions. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Dr. Gosar, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mayor Bowser. I often say that trust is a series of promises kept, and it's been made clear that Congress can't trust the swamp to enforce the rule of law. Last week, this committee passed my bill, the District of Columbia's Home Rule Improvement Act, to ensure our nation's capital is safe, stable, and governed responsibly. Congressional oversight is vital to rehabilitate the District of Columbia from its chronic crime epidemic and restore law and order. Failed leadership, soft on crime policies, rampant corruption has left D.C. more dangerous than war-torn Baghdad. This committee's investigation reveals Metro PD falsified crime statistics while the Attorney General's office seals the juvenile criminals records to protect those so-called minors. But let's be honest, they aren't kids. These are 24-year-old criminals. By allowing adults to be tried as minors, Washington, D.C. is aiding and abetting criminal activity that threatens the lives of residents, visitors, and everyone who works in our nation's capital. Washington, D.C. must earn back the trust of President Trump and Congress, but that does not happen just by blatantly manipulating crime statistics, seeking politically motivated litigation, and spending irresponsibly. Mayor Bowser, I must tell you, I've never felt safer in D.C. There's a record low crime rate, an increase in gang-related arrests, and friendly National Guardsmen patrolling the streets. Why is D.C. safer now than it was 38 days ago?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. And as I explained when we were here 2 years ago, It is true that we experienced, like many places, a spike in 2023. I can say unequivocally, this is not 2023. In each of the past 2 years, we have driven down crime. In 2023, we finished the year 35% down. Last year, we finished the year, I believe, 24% down. And all throughout this year, we were driving down to more than a 20% decrease in violent crime. I have also testified that during the surge, we experienced many hundreds of federal officers and agencies that we typically work with, and we did experience further decreases in all categories. The most substantial was in carjackings.
Gotcha. Now, Chairman Mendelson, you voted in favor of the Youth Rehabilitation Amendment Act of 2013, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if this bill allows adults under 25 years old to be prosecuted as minors. In 2023, you testified before this committee that there was no crime crisis in D.C. Now, if there's no crime crisis, then why did you establish the D.C. Violence Fatality Review Committee back in 2018, right before passing the Youth Rehabilitation Amendment Act? In fact, hold on, I'm not done yet.
Sure.
In fact, this review committee, according to the D.C. Code, Chapter 14A, is tasked with examining crimes against adults 19 years old and older. This makes no sense. So, Chairman, are 19-year-olds only considered adults when they're victims, not the criminals creating them and creating more and more violent crimes? Your juvenile curfew emergency declaration resolution of 2025 states, since 2023, the district has seen a rise in unruly behavior by juveniles. Which is it? Yes or no? Do you admit that there has been a rise in juvenile crime here in D.C. under President Trump's declared public safety emergency?
That there's been a increase in juvenile crime in the last month? I've not seen the data. I don't think so, though.
Okay.
But let me just say that the Youth Rehabilitation Act doesn't allow adults to be prosecuted as minors. They're still prosecuted as adults.
Well, I mean, it's very confusing when you have the definition of a minor is 25 and under. And then your statistics actually, you look at victims at 19 years and younger. So it has to be statistically you can make anything work with statistics.
Well,
So it's got to be one way or the other.
as you know, each law sometimes has its own definition. So for purposes of YRA sentencing, we define younger adults under 24, but that's not the same as they're being prosecuted as juveniles. Our criminal code is quite clear that anyone who's under 18 is prosecuted as a juvenile unless they are, for the most serious crimes, murder and sexual crimes, they are, by the U.S. Attorney, chosen to be prosecuted as adults.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
yield
Chair.
back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Garcia from California.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. I want to just also say this clearly, and I know that we all believe this. Violent crime, we know, has no place in our communities. People absolutely have a right to be concerned about crime. As a former mayor, and a lot of us have been in local government, we know that those concerns are real on the ground. Now, Democrats believe in investing in solutions that actually make people safer. Now, Mayor Bowser, Chairman Mendelson, Attorney General Schwab, now, can each of you just confirm with a yes or a no that you agree with me that, one, we need to make sure that we have local officers on the beat, that two, that we're investing in community partnerships and organizations on the ground, and three, that we're building trust with law enforcement. Are those things important, Mayor Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
A.G. Schwab? Yes. Thank you. Now, Mr. Jackson, is it also true that President Trump has actually destroyed and eliminated many of the programs which fight gun violence and save lives?
Yes, sir.
And did President Trump also not eliminate the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, of which, of course, you were very involved in leading?
Yes.
Thank you. And also, Mr. Jackson, is it not true that the Office of Gun Violence Prevention and the other work in the administration was literally focused on making this country safer?
That's correct.
Now, Mayor Bowser, as a former mayor, I know how hard, of course, you are working to keep people safe. You have said that mass ICE agents on the streets of DC are not helping, which I appreciate, and all of us appreciate. And of course, today we could be talking about more community policing. We could be talking about illegal guns. We could be talking about real partnerships and fully funding Washington, D.C. But we can't do that, of course, because the majority continues to ignore the crimes and corruption at 1600 Pennsylvania and the corruption of this administration. Now, we can't pull out a full map of Washington, D.C., but there are other corruption hotspots across the district. Now, let's look right next door to the White House. Here is the headquarters of the Office of Management and Budget. Just next door, OMB ordered the unlawful freezing of more than $425 billion in congressionally authorized funds. This obviates the law. It's corruption. It's a crime. This has hurt communities in D.C. and across the country. They're blocking funds for energy, education, law enforcement, and much more. Now, let's go down the map a few miles south. Here is the Department of Homeland Security, where Secretary Noam has ordered unlawful deportations and unleashed masked federal agents to harm innocent people across the country. And we have no idea, by the way, of who's following that and who's not. Who's following what rule, who is not. What we do know is that the legal rights of people and due process is being ignored. If we go up the map back to the north on Maryland Avenue, we have the Department of Education, also in D.C., more crimes and corruption. Here, the Trump administration illegally froze billions of dollars of K-12 and adult education funding. They even froze funding for mental health. And they're trying to illegally dissolve the agency in violation of the law. Again, more crimes and corruption in Washington, D.C. This would devastate children across the country, especially those with disabilities. Now, if we go back downtown, here's the Department of Commerce, where Trump and the Secretary are breaking the law by illegally imposing tariffs without congressional approval. And all is being done in violation of the law, according to the U.S. Court of Appeals. And finally, if we go across the river, another part of D.C., to the Pentagon, Secretary Hegseth is politicizing the military. He leaked classified information, putting Americans in uniform at risk, and he's illegally seized control of the National Guard and ordered soldiers to illegally engage in law enforcement activities. And so we can map D.C., we can map where crimes is happening, we can map where corruption is happening. This, of course, is all we know, just the tip of the iceberg. Now, we could list nearly every agency across the government and every federal building on a map at where crimes and corruption are happening in the district. But we will not, in this process, be silent where this crime and corruption is happening. I want to thank, again, all of our witnesses for your work to lower crime in the district and to lower the temperature across your population. I thank you all very much. With that, I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Groffman from Wisconsin.
Thank you very much. I'll point out this idea of crime going up or down. Crime, it depends what year you take as your base year. I guess in Washington, D.C., the all-time high was in 1992, where we had 482 murders. That's just almost beyond belief. Last year we had 187. If you go back 10 years to 2014, we had 105. So you could say the murder rate almost doubled, or you could look at what we were at 220 and say it fell dramatically. But in any event, I think the number of murders in Washington, D.C. is an embarrassment. The amount of crime is an embarrassment. I guess the thing is what we're doing to solve it, and we just heard 4 experts apparently on the topic give their opinion. I sometimes, when I'm back in my district, which is not Washington, D.C., do ride-alongs with local police, local sheriffs, local police, what have you. And I ask them what the causes of crime, and almost uniformly they talk about the breakdown in the family and how families are not as strong as they once were, is how they're not fathers in the family. And I think if you look at statistics, which are hard to find on the background of people committing crimes, you frequently look at what I would describe as weak families and fatherless families. Nevertheless, 4 of you in your prepared statements and talked about what we're doing to reduce crime. Not one of you mentioned the decline of the role in the decline of the role of the father in the family over the last, it's been just getting worse over the last 60 years. I'd like to ask you, are any of you doing anything to try to keep more fathers at home and being mentors for these kids. The vast majority of murders are committed by males. Are you doing anything along the line to get the fathers back in the home?
Congressman, let me answer that by saying and I know that I focused a lot on our law enforcement efforts, but we commit to and invest in a lot of prevention efforts as well, from incredible and effective funding of our public schools to our...
Yeah, I only got 5 minutes. We
Yes,
got to
to
address
our-
the topic. What are we
Yes.
doing to get fathers in the home?
Well, sir, we take the position that we support families in whatever form they come in, and we make investments that the government is responsible for. Great schools, great health care, safe streets.
Mr. Jackson, could you want to try to answer that question? Are you doing anything? to
Yes,
talk about the importance
a major priority for funding for community violence intervention programs focus directly on mentorship with young men. In DC, we have a program called Pathways. We work directly with those who are most at risk, and it's about everything from not just preventing violence, but how to strengthen their ability to be fathers, to be leaders, to be providers and protectors in the home.
Well, are we doing anything to make sure that a higher percentage of children born in the district are born in families in which there's a father in the home? Are we doing something to address that problem, which to me is the big problem? And again, we have these hearings on crime, and none of the witnesses seem to be addressing the root cause of the whole problem.
If I can, that $812 million that was terminated by the Trump administration cut community violence intervention programs. Many of them do precisely that. So if that's a priority, we should be funding, doubling down, and scaling out that work.
I'm not sure that's true, but any of the other guys, Mr. Schwab, are you aware of anybody doing anything to talk about the importance with Washington's youth of having a dad at home when that child is born? Is anybody addressing that problem in the city?
Every day, all day, sir, people are talking about how do we strengthen the family, how do we strengthen communities for young people, how do we make sure that young people have role models, family members, and others. Let me mention one other thing that's important from the work that my office does that doesn't make a lot of press. But one of the things we have a responsibility to do is do child support enforcement. And we know
No,
that
that's not the problem. The problem
non-custodial-
is we don't need a guy paying child support or having his wages garnished. The problem is we need a guy in the home. So what are we doing about getting the guy in the home?
We're trying to make sure in the enforcement of our child support rules that we are lowering the friction between non-custodial parents and custodial parents
Okay,
so that
so-
kids raised in the home have
So we're
both
not
parents
addressing the
engaged.
problem. Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't agree that we're not addressing the problem at all. We are trying to increase family stability. No government can force a couple to be together but we are, for instance, we have vigorous programs with regard to reducing teenage pregnancy.
Judge,
We are trying to reduce the
Gentleman's
cycle
time's
of poverty.
expired. Chair recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from 60 groups led by DC Vote, a letter from 150 groups led by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and a letter from the National Urban League and the Greater Washington Urban League.
Without objection, to ordered.
District of Columbia residents have all the obligations of American citizenship, including paying federal taxes, serving on juries, and registering with Selective Service. Yet Congress denies them full self-government and voting representation in Congress. The only solution to this undemocratic treatment is to grant D.C. statehood. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from leading constitutional scholars explaining why D.C. statehood bill H.R. 51 is constitutional.
Without objection, to ordered.
The admissions clause of the Constitution gives Congress authority to admit new states. All 37 new states were admitted by Congress. The district clause of the Constitution gives Congress authority to reduce the size of the federal district, which Congress did by 30% in 1846. H.R. 51 reduces the size of the federal district from 68 square miles to 2 square miles, consisting of the White House, the Capitol, the Supreme Court, and the National Mall, and remaining under the control of Congress, under control of Congress. The new state consists of residential and commercial areas of D.C. The admissions clause does not establish any prerequisites for the admission of new states, but Congress generally has considered 3 factors: support for statehood, commitment to democracy, and resources and population. 86% of D.C. residents voted for statehood in 2016. D.C. residents have demanded democratic rights for more than 220 years. D.C. has a larger gross domestic population than 16 states and a higher per capita gross domestic product than any state. D.C. has the higher per capita personal income than any state. D.C. has a larger population than 2 states. Republicans do not like that D.C. votes for Democrats, so they deny D.C. statehood. Mayor Bowser, Chairman Mendelson, and Attorney General Schwab, my question for you is, why should D.C. be a state?
Representative Norton, across the globe, Washington, D.C. symbolizes the power and the virtue of a representative democracy, a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And yet, the 700,000 of us that live here in the District of Columbia are the only residents of the capital of a democratic country that do not have a voice in our national legislature. That's wrong. That's un-American. D.C. residents are Americans too. The lack of voting representation harms the District of Columbia. We, at this moment in our country, should be expanding democracy, not constraining it.
And Congresswoman, if I can add to Attorney General Schwab's remark, because frequently people focus on our lack of representation, and that is certainly an affront to us as tax-paying Americans. What gets less focus, but has come into focus over the last several weeks, is that we lack full autonomy. So for all intents and purposes, we function like a state. I function as our jurisdiction's governor and county executive and mayor. We perform the duties that all states are asked, and we don't do anything less. But we don't have control of our National Guard, and a peculiarity of our home rule charter, a president can declare an emergency in the district. So lack of full autonomy also prevents us from using the money that we raised in taxes, like happened this year. Taxes that we raised in the district cut from our approved budget, which forced us to cut services, including the pay raises that our police officers are due, being delayed until this October.
All right, gentlelady's time has expired. Now the chair recognizes the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mendelson, is crime up or down in the last month here in D.C.?
It's down.
Down significantly, right? Robberies down 42%, deadly weapon assaults down 13%, carjackings down 85%, car theft down 24%, violent crime down 25%. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Before last year, before the surge, violent crime was down 26%. After the surge, violent crime was down 27%.
Yeah, I thought you would say that before the surge that violent crime was down. But the chairman of the Fraternal Order, in fact, you said, I think you tweeted out, or you put a statement out on August 12th, violent crime in the district is at its lowest levels we've seen in 30 years.
Correct.
But the head of the Fraternal Order of Police, Mr. Pemberton, said, when our members respond to the scene of a felony offense, inevitably there will be a lieutenant or a captain that will show up on the scene and direct those members to take a report for a lesser offense. Are you guys cooking the books?
I think we're not, but I also know that there are a couple of investigations, one by this
Well, you
committee.
settled a case too, didn't you? You just settled a case where someone said you were cooking the books. Is that right?
I can't speak to that case. I don't have familiarity.
Well, we know
of
it was settled. It's been reported.
But I do know there are collateral statistics that affirm the reduction
Is
in
Mr.
crime.
Pemberton lying? Head of the FOP?
Yes.
You think he's lying? Wow. Well, let me just read from the court case that was settled. This is the transcript of Mr. Randy Griffin, who's the commander of the Metro Police Department. And he was asked the question in his deposition. He says, Lieutenant Andrew Zabowski came up with the classification of taking property without right, correct? He responded, yes. Question, so he's saying that you told him to come up with the solution for the theft problem, which is driving up crime statistics for the district, correct? He responded, yes. Sounds like you guys are cooking the books there, according to, this is under oath from the deposition from this case that was just settled with the person who brought the action, sergeant in your police department. But you're not cooking the books?
Congressman,
The question was to Mr. Mendelson.
As I said, there are two investigations. I know there's one internal in the Metropolitan Police Department. I know that there's an investigation by this committee. I think that the three of us
What's
here
taking
welcome
property
that
without right?
investigation.
What's taking property without right?
Oh, that would be theft.
Why not call it theft? Why come up with this designation? In fact, that's what he says. He's asked the question. He
Congressman,
said,
I can't
the
speak to
solution,
that
the solution from
particular
Mr. Zabowski was to come up with this TPWR, taking property without right. What is that? Taking property without right is what again?
If you're speaking to the particular charges, I can't speak to that. And as I've said several times here, I can't speak to that particular case. I think the issue is whether there is
I'm asking a
widespread.
simple question. You have a classification for crime called taking property without right. What does that mean? What does that mean?
It means just what it said, if that's what the crime is.
Well, why not call it? I mean, what would a normal person call taking property without right?
Are we talking about what the criminal code and the specific
No, I'm just
crimes
talking
are?
about that statement that you have that's grown 500% in the last several years, that specific category of crime. I'm just wondering, what does that exactly mean?
So if we look at collateral data such as ShotSpotter, we know that gunshots are down 29% from 23
Taking
to
property
24.
without right was the question. What does that mean?
I've already answered you, sir.
And what'd you say again?
I said that if you're speaking to a particular offense in our criminal code, I cannot speak to that particular offense.
Well, why not just call it stealing? That's what we would all, someone comes and takes something that belongs to me, or someone comes and takes something that belongs to you, we call it stealing. Why
well,
create this
sir,
new category that grows 500% that I think allows you to cook the books
Sir,
as the
you
head
know,
of the FOP in your city
as
said
you
so?
know, as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, there are for many offenses a range of possible charges from misdemeanor to felony and different shades of felony. So I'm not I am not familiar with that particular offense.
Is it a good thing that, are you against having the National Guard here, or do you think that's been helpful to the citizens and the families and the people who live in the D.C. area?
We think that the D.C. National Guard is a very valuable and wonderful asset to the city. That's a little bit different than having thousands of Guard troops stationed around the city when there is not they are not trained in law enforcement, and my understanding is that many of them were looking kind of bored with what they were doing.
My time is run out. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts.
Thank you. I want to thank the witnesses for your willingness to come before the committee and help us with our work. Mayor Bowser, back in March, the Republican leadership here in the House cut $1.1 billion from the D.C. budget.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
So I live in Boston. We have about 700,000 people in our city, pretty much the same size as D.C. I know taking $1 billion out of our budget would kill us, in terms of our ability to deliver services and fund a police department. Can you talk about what that meant? It is ironic that the same people who cut $1.1 billion out of your budget 4 months later are saying, we're going to take over the city because you're not taking care of law enforcement?
That's correct, Congressman. And it was especially problematic because it came mid-year. To cut $1 billion with 12 months is bad enough, but to cut it with 6 months, it's almost impossible.
And Mayor, tell me where that $1.1 billion, where did it come from?
It came from every one of our sectors. And when you have to cut that much
But I mean,
money.
the source, was that from DC taxpayers?
100% local dollars.
Okay,
And
so they cut $1.1 billion of the tax money paid by DC residents.
That's
They cut
correct.
that from your budget so that you can't provide as much law enforcement and police officers to patrol these streets. Is that right?
That's right.
And Chairman Mendelson, you mentioned earlier that it had about $83 million underfunding of the police department directly. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's an emergency planning and security fund that Congress appropriates every year for. It is supposed to fully reimburse our MPD for its work in connection with the federal presence, whether
Okay.
it's demonstrations or escorts for the.
I get it. There's a protest down here every week, every couple of days. So
Yes.
I
And it's been
compliment you on your
underfunded.
ability to try to deal with that. And that's not DC's problem. That's the country, because this is the place we come to exercise our First Amendment rights to petition our government. So that's a lot of your problem, is the fact that you are our nation's capital, and this is where we come to complain, right? We complain to our federal government, and you have to deal with that. Attorney General Schwab, are you familiar with the Posse Comitatus Act?
I am, sir.
Your mic is not on.
Yes, the Posse Comitatus Act is a law, long-standing law in our country that makes clear that in our country, military are not engaged in policing American citizens on American soil.
Absolutely, but isn't that what President Trump is doing right now, bringing in the military to police the civilian population in this district? That's exactly what he's doing. Is that your view as well?
Well, sir, I've filed a lawsuit that involves that very issue in terms of the legality.
I read that. That's why I asked you the question.
And so while a lawsuit is pending, I'm not going to talk about the specifics of the
Okay,
lawsuit or the
okay.
merits of it, but I am very concerned about the law of our country being followed, especially when it puts the district and district residents in harm's way.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Look, so now we have armed military on the streets here in D.C. because they cut your budget so you can't hire more police, and also to recruit more police officers. That's suffering as well. And yet I see that not only is the military being politicized, coming in here and supporting one president's agenda, but they're also suffering the humiliation of having to go pick up trash and do landscaping and spreading mulch, things like that. That is not what we ask of our sons and daughters when they put on that uniform. We should treat them with more respect than this president is treating them right now. Madam Mayor, how many additional police officers do you think you could hire with that $1.1 billion that was cut from your budget?
Well, we think we can safely hire up to 300 officers per year. We know that we can add to our recruitment bonuses. We know that we can invest in the types of things that young officers want, like take-home patrol cars, like updated training facilities, and improved district headquarters.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I yield back.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Dr. Fox from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Bowser, I'm going to ask you a simple question based on the question you were just asked. Do you commit to use all that money to hire law enforcement people?
We commit to using it for law, where it was cut primarily. We have.
No, I just need to know yes or no. Will you, because you're making a big deal about wanting that money for law enforcement. Would you use it for law enforcement? Yes or no?
No, well, Congressman, we want the money because it was approved by this Congress and
Okay.
it's our money.
Thank you.
We
Thank you.
want
I
it
take
for
that-
law enforcement.
I take that as a no.
We want it for fire and EMS.
Mayor Bowser,
We
I'm
want
going to
it
change
to
the way I'm
support our
asking you
city.
questions. Mayor Bowser, it's
Yes,
my
ma'am.
time. It's my time.
There'll be order in here. Let Dr. Fox has the time. Let Dr. Fox proceed, Dr. Fox.
Mayor Bowser, do you agree that a key part of reducing juvenile crime is by improving education outcomes for students in Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Good. So you believe that education is important for reducing juvenile crime. Do you also agree that the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program, or DC OSP, which expands educational opportunities for low-income families, plays a part of helping us reach that goal?
We have a system of choice here that includes opportunity scholarships, public charter schools, and traditional public schools.
Yes, ma'am.
All
I'm
three.
quite familiar with that.
Yep.
So we know students in the DC OSP can receive a high-quality education while they may be otherwise left behind in the horribly underperforming schools in DC. This program provides real school choices for families, been repeatedly studied and evaluated. The results show that participants in the program thrive and see higher rates of high school graduation and the pursuit of higher education. Mayor Bowser, given the recent spike in juvenile crime in the city, I hope we can agree it's more important now than ever that school children have pathways to succeed and learn in safe, high-performing schools. What is your administration doing to ensure students have access to alternative education programs, including the DC OSP, to keep them engaged and on track?
Well, we have been very supportive of the SOAR Act, and we encourage this Congress to continue to support SOAR, where we invest in all sectors, including the Opportunity Scholarship Fund. We're also very proud that when we look back over 15 years in our investments in school reform with mayoral control of the schools and council oversight of the schools, we've seen enrollment in our schools nearly reach 100,000. We've seen achievement outpace our peer schools across the nation, and our children have rebounded from COVID learning loss faster than most.
Thank you.
And
Thank
our
you.
residents are responding.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I just was going to add that our residents are responding by sending their children to their neighborhood schools.
Thank
And that
you.
is a marker of success.
Thank you. Chairman Mendelson, given that better educational opportunities are strongly correlated with reductions in juvenile crime, what immediate steps is the City Council taking to ensure that DC youth have the best educational opportunities and are not left behind in failing schools?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for that question. The council has actually taken a number of steps to ensure that funding is not cut to our local schools, that the individual schools in DCPS and in the charter schools are fully funded. We have been very aggressive about assuring that. But I want to note that the legislation that was passed would have the effect of cutting DCPS by $17.5 million a year. That is hurting kids, hurting 50,000 kids in our DCPS system because they will get $17.5 million less, and that is substantial.
Thank you. A.G. Schwab, what evidence does your office have that designated juvenile curfew zones have successfully reduced incidents of teenagers roaming or causing disturbances in residential neighborhoods, and how are those results measured?
We have seen, and I support the chief's use of curfew with respect to juveniles. The way the curfew has been used here in the district is a tool for the MPD to ask young people to disperse if there are large groups of them. That has been largely successful. If youth have not dispersed in response to the MPD request, MPD will occasionally pick those youth up and bring them to what's called our Youth Services Center, where their parents are called and they're brought home. We have not seen an increase in prosecution related to curfew, but we know anecdotally that the curfew, at least as a short-term measure, has been effective in dispersing large crowds of young people.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
thank you. Before I
Mr. Chairman,
recognize-
I would like to ask for unanimous consent.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a article from Vox News entitled "Laboratories of Democracy: Washington, D.C. showed how to do universal pre-K right. D.C. offers free pre-K for toddlers. The ripple effects have helped K through 12 schools." This is the first
Without
city
objection,
in the
so ordered.
United States
Without
to have
objection, so
universal
ordered.
pre-K in the country.
Chair recognizes
They
Mr.
are
Kristamorte.
innovating and leading the
Ms.
way.
Stansbury, no tryouts for MSNBC. Chair recognizes, and before I recognize Mr. Kristamorte, if I may, that $1 billion is restored in the continuing resolution that we're going to vote on tomorrow.
It hasn't been taken up. The Senate took it up a long time ago, and this
Well,
House has
I've been
refused
a
to take that
proponent
up.
for that, and
So let's not
I've
talk
publicly-
about what we're going to do. Let's talk about what we've done.
Well, are you going to vote for the CR, Mr. Lynch? Are the Democrats going to vote for the CR that restores that $1 billion funded
I
one?
haven't read it yet.
Okay.
Let me know what it says.
All right, we'll send you the text. Chair recognizes Mr. Kristamorte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Though we're here today to discuss President Trump's takeover of D.C. law enforcement, Chicago, which I represent, is also on Trump's hit list. President Trump has demonized and called Chicago a, quote, hellhole. Attorney General Schwab, in August, the president called D.C. a hellhole as well, right?
Yes, he did.
He also said, quote, Chicago is the murder capital of the world. And just yesterday, he called Chicago, quote, a death trap. I have here a list of states that, based on FBI data, have the highest number of violent crimes per capita. 4 of the top 5 states on this list are run by Republicans. And if you're talking about total murders in absolute terms, it turns out Texas is number 1. In this particular list here, Illinois is number 29. Now, Attorney General, you see Alaska tops this list. To your knowledge, the president hasn't called Alaska a hellhole, right?
I have not heard that.
And Arkansas is number 4 here. He didn't call Arkansas a hellhole, correct?
I have not heard that.
And you haven't heard the president talk about deploying the National Guard in Texas, correct?
I have not.
Folks, this isn't about crime. It's about politics. Just this week, Trump said, quote, I'm going to Chicago early against Pritzker. Pritzker is nothing. That's not how a president should be talking about any governor or any state. I'd like to talk about the National Guard deployment here in D.C. and the cost of it. Now, Mr. Jackson, as you said, I believe that the D.C. deployment is going to cost over $200 million, correct?
Correct, that's projection.
Let's see how this money is being used. Trump says it's for fighting crime, but here's a guardsman carrying trash. Here's a guardsman mowing the lawn. Here's a very nice gentleman, a guardsman carrying a leaf blower. Honorable work, certainly, but this is not why the taxpayers fund the National Guard. If Trump was serious about crime, he wouldn't cut nearly $4 million in federal funding for local violence prevention groups in Chicago. Attorney General, you'd agree the president should be funding these crime prevention programs, not cutting them, right?
As I said in my testimony, sir, prosecution and prevention are both essential to making sure cities are safe, and we have to do both. Crime intervention work, violence intervention work has been successful here in the District of Columbia in terms
You shouldn't be cutting that
of
work,
driving
right?
gun violence down. We need to invest in it.
Not cut it, right?
Correct.
This week, I want to turn to another topic. In Elgin, a Chicago suburb in my district, an American citizen was pulled from his home, cuffed, and detained by ICE. And another U.S. citizen in Des Plaines, also in my district, was tased in the face and detained in another ICE operation. This is shameful, and I'm extremely concerned about the safety and well-being of my constituents. I'm also concerned about the devastating impact that out-of-control ICE raids and the deployment of the National Guard will have on the economy and jobs back in the Chicago area. Let's look at a couple stats. Foot traffic for Chicago's second most profitable business corridor on 26th Street is down 60% since ICE raids began. And this is not just a hypothetical concern that the same would happen with the deployment of National Guard. Let's look at what's happened to DC's economy. Mr. Schwab, CNN has reported restaurant reservations decreased by as much as 31%, and foot traffic in retail stores is down 81%. Those reports show that the president's unilateral deployment of the Guard is hurting the local economy, right?
That's consistent.
Folks, our economy is softening. Unemployment and prices for necessities like vegetables are soaring. Mr. President, let's put aside politics and hostility toward governors and elected officials. Let's not take actions that hurt families and the economy. I'd like to turn to my final topic, and that's domestic violence. Attorney General Schwab, according to The Hill, President Trump suggested that, quote, a little fight with the wife shouldn't count in D.C. crime stats. You don't dispute The Hill reported this, right?
I saw that.
But there's nothing little about 12,000 victims of domestic violence in D.C. or nothing little about 50,000 Illinoisans experiencing domestic violence, correct?
No, it's a very serious crime.
There's nothing little about 12,000 children, more than 12,000 children who witnessed domestic violence in Chicago either, right?
It's traumatizing.
It's abhorrent that the president routinely dismisses violence faced by women. And given his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, this attitude, unfortunately, comes as no surprise. Let's be clear. There's nothing little about domestic violence, not the scale of the problem or the courage of the survivors. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Higgins from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. On August 11th, 2025, the day the president took action here in D.C., Councilman Allen said this: the president taking over local control of the MPD and putting the U.S. military onto the streets of D.C. under the guise of public safety is wrong. It's an extreme, outrageous, and dangerous move for our city and the safety of our residents. Do you agree with that statement by Councilmember Allen, Attorney General Schwab?
I do believe that the presence of thousands of armed troops in the district has been a problem and counterproductive for public safety in the district.
Counterproductive, dangerous. He said the second sentence, dangerous move for our city and the safety of our residents. How is 85% reduction in carjackings dangerous for the city, for the city's
I
residents?
don't believe that
Chairman Mendelson, do you believe that, do you agree with Mr. Councilman Allen's statement?
Well, if the question is about the National Guard reducing carjackings, I don't think the National Guard was involved in reducing carjackings.
I'm asking about this statement. Do you agree with Councilman Allen's statement?
Could you repeat the statement again?
President taking over local control of the MPD and the U.S. military on the streets of D.C. under the guise of public safety is wrong. It's dangerous, outrageous, and extreme move for our city and the safety of our residents.
If you'll recall, at the time that he said that, the order from the
He said that the day it happened.
Yes, the order from the Attorney General was that all orders within MPD would have to be approved by...
How about you, Mayor? Do you agree with the councilman's statement?
But would have to be approved by the
Asking the mayor now. I'm
DEA.
asking
I know,
the
but
mayor
I
now.
didn't finish my sentence.
Well, I'm
It has to
asking
be
the mayor the
approved by the
question. We control the
DEA.
time. Mayor
That's
Bowser, do you
complete
agree?
The
disorganization.
mayor.
Mr. Jordan, I think the statement is not what happened, actually. So the Home Rule Charter allows the president to make requests of MPD through the mayor. It does not allow the president to take over MPD, which at no time happened.
Well, I'll just point out that it seems to me you disagree because you said just 2 weeks ago, we greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do with the city. We know that when carjackings go down, when gun use goes down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer. So it's like Councilman Allen doesn't know what he's talking about. Looks like you definitely disagree with him.
We, having more officers enhance the effectiveness of MPD allowed us to accelerate crime reduction.
Representative Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the gentleman from Ohio. We are constantly at odds with the